As you're aware, this is all part of the immensely complicated South China Sea disputes. Okay? And this dispute is not between only the Philippines and China. It is between China and the rest of the Southeast Asian nations bordering the South China Sea. How did this come about? We'll go through it briefly through these slides. Next, please. Now, first of all, before we look at what happened, let's take into account what is actually at stake. Why are these various countries claiming the South China Sea or parts thereof? Now, this map, another representation which I made, shows you both the 9-dash line claim of China based on that 2009 map. Basically, just traced it. There's no coordinates. There's no claim of accuracy here, because it's just a trace against the potential 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone of the Philippines under UNCLOS, and the various islands, rocks, and reefs that we currently occupy, as well as Scarborough Shoal. Most people, when they talk about the South China Sea, think of only those two, the 9-dash line versus the Philippine EEZ and the islands. But when you look at it, that is not really what's valuable. Okay? What's valuable is what is encompassed within those lines. And that is the resources of the sea, the South China Sea. Next slide, please. If we talk about fisheries, and this probably can bring things into perspective, this is based on two data sets. One is the locations of possible coral reef areas, and this is the shallower reef area of 150 meters deep, outlined there in yellow. And so you see that there are, along the coastline, China, Vietnam has a huge area of shallow waters beyond their shores, while the Philippines practically has none, except for that portion of Palawan, west of Palawan. And then you have the shallower areas within the Spratly Island region, which is this entire region, by the way. We are not claiming that entire region. We're only claiming the part that we call the Palawan Island Group, which is up to around here. Spratly Island is not there. It's not within the area that we're claiming. It is outside. This is Makiskilba, a shallow area. And then these are the paracels, which are being claimed by China and Vietnam. We are not claiming anything in the paracels. This happens to also be the location of Woody Island, where just this week, it was reported that China had installed missile batteries. Okay, so this is a totally different area. We have nothing to do with this. Okay? This is the area of our concern, as well as Bao de Masinloc. Okay. Now, if you notice, when you talk about fisheries within the South China Sea which are being disputed, most of the fisheries, which are the most intensively used areas, which are highlighted in orange, they're mostly close to the shores of the various countries, with the exception of this area, which is more or less in the middle of the high seas and is in a relatively deeper area. Okay? Unlike this one, where you have that shallow area, this one does not. Okay? So the fisheries are actually concentrated along the coastline of these various countries. And so, in terms of fishing activity within the South China Sea, historically, there's actually been relatively less, much less than along the coastline. It's only been in the past couple of years, in fact, since 2011, that the intensity of fishing within this area has actually increased. And what accounts for it, actually, is the fact that China has actively encouraged its fishing fleets based around the South Shore and Hainan to move out of their coastal area and into the Spratly Island Group. Reason? The fishery resources on the southern coast have already been depleted. And there is no other fishing ground there except for perhaps aquaculture. And if you want more, if you want capture fisheries to continue, you have to move out. And since these coastal fisheries are basically fishing for bottom-dwelling fish, coral species, etc., food fish, the closest is basically here and here. Okay? And that's why they've been moving out to this area. On the other hand, Philippine fisheries have still concentrated largely within archipelagic waters that you see there, as well as along the north and west of Palawan. This is still the richest fishing ground of the Philippines. 20% of our total fish catch is estimated to come from this area. And the fishers around this area are not fishers from Palawan. They're fishers from Navotas and the Visayas. Okay. This is a representation of the so-called sedimentary basins where petroleum reserves can be found. The redder they are, the more petroleum reserves there are. Okay. And so you'll see that again, similar to fishing, when you talk about petroleum, actually most of the petroleum is near the coastline of the various countries. The petroleum content of the middle part of the South China Sea, particularly this light area here, is 0. While along these darker areas here, it's still unknown to maybe minimal. And that is based on American data collated from all the various oil companies operating in this region. Okay? So even when you talk about petroleum in South China Sea, you also have to be careful in discriminating. It's not the entire South China Sea which is rich in petroleum. In fact, when the US government comes out with an estimate of petroleum potential in the South China Sea, that petroleum potential includes all of these areas. So the South China Sea for the United States includes up to here and here, no? And here. And those are not really part of the disputed areas around the islands here and here. Okay. So you could say that there's a lot of exaggeration, a lot of misunderstanding as well, misappreciation of the nature really and the causes of these disputes. No? And unfortunately, most people, including governments, are under that misperception or misunderstanding. Okay? Next slide, please. Take, for example, our own petroleum exploration activities. Most of our activities are focused around the shelf around Palawan, very close to our coastline. Okay. This is Service Contract 72, which is over Reed Bank. This one is now controlled by the group of Mr. Manny Pangilinan through Philex Exploration, partnered with Forum Energy of the UK. Okay. And this is the one that has been subject to intense Chinese attention. This is the one that they want to have joint development with the Philippines. Okay. The thing is, they have also been protesting petroleum exploration in these areas here, no? Ostensibly because, again, of the 9-dash line, because it's within the 9-dash line area. And that indicates to you, that is the clear manifestation of China's overreach in this area. Because unless China is claiming total sovereignty over the entire area of the 9-dash line, they cannot possibly protest a petroleum exploration being undertaken by the Philippines here. It's open water kasi, open seas. And it's obviously within 100 kilometers of the coastline of the Philippines. Okay? And that is now the problem. It's part of the problem. On China's part, an overreach with respect to the meaning of the 9-dash line. Okay? Whereas before, you remember, 1947, the title of the map is Map of the South Sea Islands, which indicates that it only refers to the islands. This is already well beyond those islands. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, shipping. When you hear freedom of navigation, the term freedom navigation or freedom navigation and overflight, okay, these next two slides are what it's about. Freedom navigation refers to the freedom accorded to all states to traverse or to make use of the oceans for transportation beyond the territorial sea. Okay? And the territorial sea is only 12 nautical miles from the coastline or your baselines. Oh, by the way, it's indicated here as an orange line. So you can imagine also that they will be very close to the coastline here. Okay? All ships have the right to pass through the high seas, so-called, including the EEZ. These blue lines represent shipping. Those are the tracks, actual tracks of vessels in the year 2007. Okay, so 1 year's worth of data shows that these are the most intensively used routes through the South China Sea. Okay. Most of them passing through here in the middle and going to perhaps to Hong Kong, of course. No? But then a portion also hugging the Philippine coastline here. And these ships are very varied. Okay? All sorts of ships, from tankers to bulk carriers to pleasure craft, use these routes. When the United States talks about freedom navigation, it is principally concerned with the ability of its Navy to make use of these routes as well. Okay. Problem is that China does not recognize that right in favor of the United States or any military for that matter, and refuses, does not recognize rather, that the Americans can use these sea lanes, especially these areas close to the Chinese coastline, for military activities. It has extended that policy to include the entire South China Sea. So China does not want any military operations, where even just passing through, to take place within that large area. And that is the threat to America's interest in freedom of navigation. Because if the US Navy cannot pass through here, they would have to go around Indonesia, perhaps, or even Australia, in order to get to the Indian Ocean. And that is a serious impediment to military mobility. And so when the United States talks about its interest in the South China Sea, it is principally concerned with that, the ability to pass through the South China Sea, both in ships and aircraft. Now, these are the common route of ships. The next slide, please. This, on the other hand, is the common route of commercial aircraft. Okay, so you see again that the South China Sea is crisscrossed by these air routes, as well as those shipping lanes. Okay, now, wait, could you go back to the previous slide? One other thing you might notice is the location of these disputed islands. These are the ones that are of our concern, as well as Scarborough Shoal. And its relationship to these lines, to the blue lines. And then the next slide, please. And here particularly, the relationship Scarborough Shoal to the lines that go to Manila. And you see immediately the importance, the strategic importance of these islands. Okay? As far as the Spratlys and Scarborough go, from those vantage points, you can see everything that's happening in the South China Sea in terms of shipping. Okay? And from Scarborough Shoal, you can see everything that's happening in terms of shipping and air travel into and out of Manila. And that would include, of course, if there are any military activities going on, whether it's Filipino or American, because this also happens to be the area where most of the military will operate. Subic, Clark, Manila. Okay. And that tells you why these places are of immense strategic importance, even if from a research perspective, they may not be as valuable, okay, at this point. Okay. Next slide, please. Now, why is it important for China? Of course, we assume that it is because of the resources. The South China Sea is a huge area where historically all nations around it have been fishing. It is assumed to be also as we mentioned earlier, an area where petroleum reserves can be found, and we know that China, of course, will require enormous petroleum reserves for its energy consumption. But it's a lot more than that now, because even if it were so, then you would expect some kind of rational thinking, really rational, scientific thinking to be going into their policies. But obviously, it's a lot more than that now. It's actually a huge emotional and psychological issue for China, particularly. This is a capture from one of their documentaries about the South China Sea. And you see here the propaganda value of the South China Sea being brought to bear. You see here, this was made by the CCTV network, and you see again the propagandists exploiting it to the full by showing or representing the South China Sea as a kind of torch with China being the flame. Nothing more nationalistic than that, I guess. You can really, there's a lot of imagination that's going into this. And so it's really now not just resources, there's also an element of national pride now that is invested in a very major way in the South China Sea. And that lets you understand as well, probably gives you an idea, an inkling of the lengths that China will be willing to go to in order to protect its position on the South China Sea.